Hello, my name is Kimberly Woolfolk, and I'm the Read 180 teacher here at Monroe Elementary School. Today I would like to discuss with you essential question number 8, students' use of technology in the classroom. As Monroe is a one-to-one device school, we have the good fortune of having all students grade 4 through 6 have a Chromebook. So I have some very specific goals for how students can use technology in my classroom. My first goal is to help students apply the concepts that they are learning in the classroom. And so as we go through a lesson, I want to use this as additional independent practice for my students so that they're able to have as many exposures to a particular concept and how to apply it as possible. Another goal to using technology in my classroom is to really help my students practice and develop higher order thinking skills that are going to be necessary for them as they make the transition back to their general ed classroom. All of these higher order thinking skills should be aligned to our Common Core state standards. And so I try to use software in my classroom which does align very nicely to those standards. Next, I want technology to engage students in the learning process both inside and outside of the classroom. So there are certain technologies that are very easy for my students to use in my classroom, but I also want other pieces of technology for students to be able to engage with at home, maybe involve their parent or another sibling in their household, and really get involved in learning a particular skill or using a particular website, and we'll discuss some of those that I have in my classroom. In addition, I want to help students with the process of being able to transition back to their normal classroom after they've met the criteria to exit out of Read 180. So I do spend a lot of time in using software tools that will really not only help students close learning gaps, but also to try as much as possible before they exit to get them working towards grade level or to be at grade level for a particular skill. And so I try as much as possible to expose them to material that is at grade level, so at least they are familiar with concepts that they're covering in their general education classroom. So some of the software that's used by my students are Haiku, which we have discussed in the previous video, and if you want to see or get a little more information on Haiku, please feel free to view my video on essential question number 7. In addition, we discussed about the System 44 and Read 180 software. So those are big hallmarks as a part of the Read 180 program and a part of our rotation system. What I would like to discuss today in particular is EPIC, Read Theory, Spelling Vocabulary City, and Storyboard. So those are the 4 pieces of software that I would really like to show you that are being used in my classroom and how they are being used in my classroom by my students. So first, let's take a look at EPIC. When students first log on to EPIC, they will get this screen, and as you can see, all of my students have created avatars for themselves. So they will pick their name and they will immediately have access to content, mainly books, within EPIC at their level. Now, when students signed in to EPIC, they were able to choose for themselves reading material based on their interest. And so they filled out a brief survey and they were able to find what they wanted. And then, as you can see, EPIC will recommend books for them. So they do have, as you can see here, featured readings or collections of which the students can read. So there's a list of some of them based on their interest. And so some of these are serial books Uh, for instance, the Boxcar Children, they might have access to several books within that series. And so students can come here and pick one of those books to read, or they, based on what they chose earlier when they were doing the survey, they can read different books, and this will be populated different for each student. So what I like about this book is that students can either read or have it read to them. And so there is value in having a book read to them, especially if it is beyond their Lexile level, but it's something they really want to read. They are able then to choose that book, listen to the story, and there still is comprehension that is going on. And so this is a great tool that my students are using in my classroom right now. And so we've read quite a bit of books on here, and it's just really a great tool that they're using. So the other thing that is important for me is I can go in and see which books my students have read, how long they've stayed on that particular book, how many pages it was, how long they spent reading, if they completed the reading or not. So as you can see, one of my students started this book, only flipped through 5 pages, and spent a total time of 4 minutes on this. And so apparently they didn't like it, and I always tell my students that if you start a particular book and you don't care for it, don't continue to read it. Just stop and move on to something different. And so this is a nice feature for me because I can go in and see what they're reading, who's read it, who's finished by day. And so it really helps me see how they're accessing the books and what they're choosing. The other thing that I like about Epic is during Read Across America week, we had a contest in our room, and so our students were able to participate. And during the week of February 29th through March 4th, my students read 313 books. So that was a great accomplishment. Everybody pitched in, everyone read a lot of books, and so I thought for a week's worth of reading, that was great effort. And so we really enjoyed that. So this is great because students are able to access this both in my classroom and at home, and they really do like going on finding books here to read. So the next site I would like to go to and show you is Read Theory. Now before we go to Read Theory, I would just like to explain to you some of the benefits of using that particular software tool. Read Theory was really designed to help students really work on some of the standards within the Common Core. And so as you can see, when students come onto the website, they will take a pre-test, and it's about 10 to 15 questions. This will determine their Lexile level. So as you can see right here, here are my students, and if I just roll over a particular student, you will see what their pre-test level was. So this particular student tested in the 3rd grade. I had another student do a pre-test, also tested in the 3rd grade. As you can see, I have one student here tested in 1st grade, and so everyone is all over the place, and it's based on really their ability to not only read the text but comprehend the text. So then after they take the pre-test, it gives me an assessment of their Lexile level, their pre-test Lexile level. So as you can see here, this particular student tested at a 490. This particular student tested at a 740. This particular student at a 390. So as you can see, I have a variety. I had one student 150. I had one student that only tested at a 40. One student that tested as a 30. So as you can see, I have students that are all over the map. Now, as they read and take additional quizzes on this site, their Lexile level will change and it will go up and down. So basically, the reason why my students like this particular site is because they're able to earn points and badges. And so as you can see, some of them are very motivated. They've earned a lot of points. Other students not so much. But we continue to work on this and to get students to really focus on at least taking I have them take 2 quizzes every other day. So 3 days a week they're taking quizzes. Now here what you can see, or you'll see the number of post-test quizzes. So this tells me where they were pre-test and if they tested above the pre-test. So basically how well they're doing on each quiz, and visually I can see it, so I can go and see, okay, how are they doing? Like for instance, this particular student tested below the pretest level, and so I know that we'll need to do some work with her as she begins to transition back into her normal classroom if this does not change. And so as students begin to take quizzes, it also gives me a measure of how they did post-test and pre-test. So as you can see here, this is how they were pre-tested, and now as they're taking quizzes, they've stayed the same. No growth yet, but eventually they will see growth. This particular student tested at a 2nd grade, and now they're at a 2.5, so they have gained some growth. And it's important that the students are just going at their own pace. Again, you'll see here the Lexile level. So you can see here this person tested at a 340, but now they've aggregated down to a 320, and this is based on them taking quizzes and what they're able to comprehend. So I like this tool because now I can see some growth. This particular student was pre-tested at 150. Now their Lexile is at a 350, so I know that this particular student is growing. They're comprehending what they're reading. And so this gives me a good idea of some of my students who may not be applying some of the strategies, comprehension strategies that we're discussing in class. And so this gives me an opportunity to either change my teaching style so that they are able to apply what we're learning in terms of comprehension in a better manner, and then I should see these test scores go up. And again, this is not at grade level, as you can see. Many of my students are working well below grade level, but this is a software program that is putting them where they're at, and they're using this as an additional tool aside from the instruction that they're getting from me in order to grow. And last but not least, this measures how my students are doing. In other words, how they're answering a question against the standard. So this particular standard is key ideas in detail. So are they able to basically tell me what the main idea of the story is and give me 2 or 3 details? That is a skill that they need to be able to do under the Common Core strategy or standards. And so this tells me where they're at. So 33% were answered incorrectly and 67% were answered correctly. So now I know that I need to go back and maybe do additional teaching or give the students additional strategies in order for them to be able to do this better. Same thing with this, craft and structure. So maybe going back and revisiting text structure, revisiting some of our themes and how we're applying that to understanding the reading. So this gives me a good, really diagnostic tool to basically inform my teaching and then help me change my teaching to reach my students in a more effective manner. So I love this website. My kids love this website. And then here, if you come to the drop-down menu, it has a list of all my students. And if we clicked on one, then I would be able to see how this student was doing individually. So once this comes up, it will give me some of the same information, but it will be isolated down for this particular student. The other thing that I really love about this website is that after the students take the test, they are able to access the questions and to see if they answered something wrong, why their answer was not the best choice. And so I really love that about this test. This is taking a little bit of time, but so we might come back to this. But anyway, this is a great tool for my students. I love it, they love it, and it really does help inform my instruction from all of the pieces of diagnostic data that I'm able to get from this. So the next two things I'd like to look at are Spelling and Vocabulary City, and then Storyboard, which will be the new piece of software that they're going to use in my room in terms of writing. So first I like to go to Spelling and Vocabulary City and just show you some of the things that we're working on in my classroom, and then we'll journey over to Storyboard so you can see how that particular website works. So first we'll take a look at Spelling and Vocabulary City. And so what I love about this particular website is that after I post the list that students are allowed to do, they're able to come in here and they're able to play a particular game. And so I have one student in particular who is still trying to acquire the English language. So I use this site to help her with her phonological awareness, and she can come in and she can practice her initial sounds, she can practice her ending sounds, she can practice all kinds of different phonological awareness skills, and that really helps her. The other thing that I like using this for is for the resources. So I can have access to different activities that I can assign for my students. And so they're able to play games, watch videos, do word sorts. So this really helps them become familiar with the particular spelling pattern that we're learning for the week. The other thing I love about this is that I'm also able to give them vocabulary lists. So then they're engaged in vocabulary activities where they can really go in and see a particular tool. So essentially what I'll do is let me log in here very quickly, and I can show you some of the word lists that my students use. So once you get logged into the site, you will come to this screen as a teacher. Now I have many lists that I have already downloaded, and these lists really are based on where a particular group is in terms of the spelling. And so that list will fit where my students are developmentally. And then I will just come up here and I will assign the list to my different spelling groups. And then I will assign vocabulary to all of my students. And so I just go in and determine which groups I need to assign a particular assignment to. And as you can see here, I can tell how many people have done the assignment, what's still missing. And so this is a nice way for me to be able to visually go in and look and see what students are doing. I'm also able to view test results, and so I can go in and see who's taken the test, what their scores are, and if we can move on with a particular spelling skill, or if we need to review that particular word pattern using a different list, of course, but reviewing the word pattern nonetheless. So it gives me a lot of good diagnostic data. And really, what I try to do is the word pattern that we're doing in spelling, I also try to give them a reading for homework so that they're not seeing those word patterns in isolation, but seeing them within context and seeing how well they can read that particular reading. Now, the other feature that I'm also reading is using or will be using is Storyboard, and I love Storyboard. I know my students will too. Basically, Storyboard is a website that students can go. Artists have generously donated their works, and as you can see, there's tons of artwork on here. So students can create either a poem using the artwork, they can create a picture book, or they can create what they call in here a long form story or a chapter book. And so if I were to go in and choose this particular piece of art, I could say I wanted a multi-chapter book, a picture book, or a poem. Let's go ahead and pick picture book. And so students will be able to go in, and this may take a little bit of time to paint, but once it does, the software is very intuitive. And so what happens is the artwork will show up, and there will be different elements of art that will come into view, and then students are able to click on a picture and simply start writing text. And so just to show you how easy it is, here is a page in my book. If I want to add another page, I simply click on the plus sign and I've got my second page here. And then I can simply drag and drop my picture. And so now she's gonna dream big. And then I come over here and I could simply type some text. So I can say, I want all students to dream big. And students can continue adding pages and adding pictures and developing their own book. And in the end, we will be creating digital books that students are able to share with each other in the classroom and read, and also with their parents. And the nice thing about this, if parents want to purchase the book, it gives them several options to purchase the book that students have written, and they are authors. And we need to inspire our students to know that this is achievable. Regardless of how they struggle with reading, they can be published authors. All they have to do is to use their imagination and to really feel inspired by these beautiful pieces of artwork that people have so generously posted to the site. So I'm really excited by the prospect of this. I think my students will get a kick out of it. I think they're going to enjoy it a lot. And I will be posting links to their digital books again on Haiku, so that they can have access and so that they can read each other's work. So I'm very excited. I think this will be very popular in my classroom. And I also, on top of that, it will allow my students to practice their writing skills in a way that they probably never even thought that they would be able to practice their writing skills. So this is just a small way in which I am purposefully and meaningfully and thoughtfully using technology in my classroom. This is how students are accessing the technology and using it in my classroom. And I hope it gave you some insight into how I plan and how I use technology and how my students are using technology. So thank you, and until next time.